Greetings, diners, and welcome to another edition of the Colllapse Cafe here on the Doomstead Diner. All right, we are back in the saddle, and I am starting a new feature here. I am going to treat everybody to some beautiful Alaska scenery as we follow the collapse of industrial civilization. And behind me, you see the Brooks Range, I think that is. I'm not 100% sure that those are the ones, but there's some of the mountains that we have here anyway. Uh, all right, so what's happening? Well, I think I mentioned in a prior episode that the Saudi Arabians were going to start pricing their oil in other currencies besides the dollar. I think most significantly the Chinese are in renminbi. And as a result of that, the shorts, people who bet short on oil and expect the price to drop, drove the price of oil down over the day or two subsequent to that. But now the bulls, the oil bulls, have reasserted themselves and pushed the price back up to over $80. And the target price for oil is generally between $80 and $100. That's where everybody in the industry wants it these days. The not only the people who absolutely need it to be that high because their production prices are high, but the Saudis themselves also want the price to stay up there, at least for now, because they make a bigger profit that way, right? And everybody wants to make as much money as they can while they can. So the prediction that the IEM made that drove the prices down, saying that oil will have its demand zenith by 2029, has now been digested, and they're back to believing that there's going to be plenty of oil at least for the next 10 years or so. Which, it could be true or it could not be true. It really depends on what happens with our economy, and that's what is going to drive the demand. The emergence of electric vehicles and the emergence of artificial intelligence, which is also a big energy hog. Those things demand a lot of energy, and the hope is that it's going to come from renewables, but renewables probably are not able to meet that demand yet. So the hope is in the fossil fuel industry that they'll continue to be selling their product at for the foreseeable future, right? That has had its consequences with climate, as I think everybody knows. This year was once again set the hottest year on record. I think in the last few days in India, they ran to 126 degrees Fahrenheit in Delhi. And I think that in a lot of these countries, they have power shortages. They have blackouts, brownouts. And when the temperatures get that high, air conditioning is no longer a comfort of life. It's a necessity of life. Your body just cannot survive very long when the temperature reaches those levels. They call it wet bulb temperature. Even with sweating and with a fan, your body can't cool itself fast enough, and as a result, you're subject to heat stress and heat stroke, and people die from those things. And the uh, rate at which people are dying of those illnesses is also has increased. I think something like 15 or 20% in the last couple of years, and I think we're going to see that problem uh, emerging globally as time goes on. I don't know how well recorded it is and how well uh, tracked those things are, but I think it's going to be a significant problem as we move along here. And then let's move off of those topics to discuss another favorite topic, which is alternative energy and what we're going to be using to substitute. Making the news, at least on my Google searches, the way my Google interprets my interests, um, apparently a lot of people are betting on hydrogen as a fuel, green hydrogen as it's known, which would be hydrogen that's produced by electrolysis of water from renewable energy, using electricity produced by either solar power or wind turbines or even nuclear uh, to split water into its constituent hydrogen and oxygen atoms, and then packaging up the hydrogen either as a compressed gas or as a supercooled liquid, and using that to power automobiles, super tankers, even airplanes has been uh, talked about. There are a lot of problems with that, specifically the energy density of hydrogen is substantially less than that of the fossil fuels that are used, kerosene in the case of jet airplanes, and diesel fuel for trucks, and gasoline for cars. Uh, those different fractions of fossil fuels uh, have a lot of energy packed in a very small mass. So to try to fit enough hydrogen onto a truck or into a car to drive the kind of mileage that people expect, which, 300 miles is usually a kind of a minimum range that people expect out of their cars, well, it takes some creativity. It can be done, though. I have seen a design from Toyota where they basically take the hydrogen tanks and line the entire uh, chassis of them with it, and the body of the car and everything else is above the tanks. So in that case, you maintain your trunk space and you maintain your passenger space and so forth, even with carrying much larger tanks in order to have your supply. Uh, and similarly, with something like a super tanker or boats, you're really not constrained that much by the amount of space that the fuel will take. It reduces your cargo space, of course, um, but you can't carry a whole lot of fuel. Um, Even so, efforts made not in the commercial industry, but in the billionaire class have produced some, at least one of their super yachts that was supposed to be a green super yacht, which is almost an oxymoron there, contradiction in terms, uh, that it runs on hydrogen. But in fact, uh, the only thing that the hydrogen powers is its hotel functions. In other words, it's electricity, it's lighting, it's air conditioning, all of the devices that they have on board. Uh, their big screen TVs and computers and all the rest of those things. It does not actually power the ship when they do like a transatlantic crossing. They have auxiliary power for that, and that is fossil fuel powered. So, uh, and the reason for that is to maintain all the space and all the amenities that they want, that your average billionaire wants for his parties with supermodels. They can't fit the hydrogen and the supermodels on the boat at the same time. Hydrogen has its uses, and it can be a great fuel for uh, local driving and for uh, short airplane trips. In Europe, they're betting on hydrogen in the air industry. Airbus is producing airplanes that will be powered by hydrogen. And then it depends on how you use the hydrogen. It can be used in a couple of ways. It can be used either as a combustible fuel in a combustion engine, um, or it can be used in what's called a fuel cell, where the hydrogen is passed through a membrane, and it combines with oxygen, and in the process, it releases electrons that then use to power a vehicle. So it becomes an electric vehicle. All the rest of it is just like an electric powered vehicle that was using a lithium ion battery pack, the motor and all the rest of it, the electronics inside, and the control systems and brakes and all that stuff. It's all electric, right? So there's no difference. The difference is in terms of refilling it. It takes a long time to charge a electric vehicle, and it takes a lot of juice in terms of how much power is going through the lines, all the infrastructure that delivers electricity. And the big problem with electric vehicles and EV sales in the United States has been the fact that our charging infrastructure is not up to the task of handling EVs. Certainly not in the numbers that they project that it's supposed to go to over the next 10 years. The desire or mandates, if you will, from many countries and from the UN is that the climate or the automotive fleet be 100% non-fossil fuel by 2035. Well, that's just not going to happen, at least in the United States, and I don't. I don't really think it's possible in Europe either. If anything, I think their electric grid is even more antiquated than it is here. Um, so it's the charging stations. That's sort of what people need. If they don't have, if they're not charging it themselves in their house every night. If you live in an apartment and your car is parked on the street, you can't necessarily run an extension cord from your apartment down to the street. I know I couldn't have done that when I lived in New York, so it would be more possible up here. Up here, a lot of places have outdoor electric because people use it to keep their cars warm. They have block heaters to plug your car in when it's cold in the wintertime. And then cold has a lot of bad effects for electric vehicles in terms of battery performance. So electric vehicles haven't been very popular up here, but that's a tangent. Going over to uh, the infrastructure, uh, having enough charging stations is one thing, and in metropolitan areas, there's enough of them, well, more or less. But once you get outside the major metros, the charging stations, public charging stations, are few and far between. So the rental car business has not been very good for EVs. And Hertz, who bet big and bought 20, 30,000 Teslas a few couple of years ago, uh, discovered that people didn't want to rent the EVs. And then on top of that, they found that they're difficult to repair, difficult and expensive to repair, and uh, they don't get very good price on the resale market. Uh, the rental car companies depend on selling the cars after about 2 years. Nobody wants to rent, a 3, 4, 5-year-old car. All right, when you rent, you want you want new. It's kind of like a bonus of you know, because most of the renters, or at least a big significant part, are business renters, and the company pays for it. So uh, you don't want to be in a heap when you're uh, on a business trip or on vacation. You want to rent a nice new car, and usually a car that's a luxury car above your price range that you would normally buy. Right? You're treating yourself. So they are not getting the good prices on the resale market. In fact, they have to give them away. The Teslas are going for like $25,000 each, where they were $60,000 when they were new. And that is not a good return for the rental car company. They're taking too big a hit. They depend on the money they get on resale when they figure in how much the cost is going to be. So, without that market, and then without Joe Sixpack buying the cars in enough quantity, they sell well to the wealthy because, at least in this country, they're fairly high priced. The auto companies themselves, and Tesla, the upstart that has been driving electrification of automobiles here in the United States, have produced cars that are high priced and for the upper class of our society, but they haven't really been very successful in producing cars that people with lower incomes will buy. Uh, so the big three automotive companies have sort of backed off their building of EVs. They've gone back to producing hybrids, and then what sells well for them, which is their SUVs and their light trucks. Those do very well in the American market. Um, so we're not producing the EVs. We don't have enough charging stations. Our infrastructure, the wiring that delivers the electricity, whether it be from fossil fuel plants or from renewable energy, is not sufficient. There's something like I can't remember how many gigawatts of power backlog in terms of um, power stations, renewable energy plants that are not hooked up to the grid. They are not hooked up because of uh, regulatory issues in getting all the permits necessary for all the wiring and all the rest of that, and then the costs because copper and aluminum, which are used for all the wiring, those are expensive items, and they need a lot of it. They essentially want to double the size of uh, the capacity of our electric grid to carry electricity in the next 10 years. That means building as much in 10 years as it has taken over 100, 150 years to build in the first place. I mean, the first electricity went in the United States with Edison back in the 1900s. I think it was in Buffalo, and it came from hydropower at the time, from Niagara Falls, right? That's where we have one of our biggest power stations, um, hydropower, which is renewable also, um, but limited in the number of locations that you can set it up. You know, we've got that. We've got the Hoover Dam and dams, a few dams around the country that produce large amounts of power, but we do depend much more still on fossil fuels, natural gas mostly. These days we have gone off coal for electric power for the most part. Um, and so it's getting enough power just to begin with, and then enough of a support system to do all of that, all of those things inside of 10 years. It's really stressing our capabilities as a culture to do that. And well, it's still an open question whether it'll happen or not, but I do not think we're going to get there, not fast enough. And then the most proximal, let's say a little redundant, all right, the proximal issue we have is, of course, the economy. And if the economy is not chugging along well, then everything slows down. All of those things, the investment necessary won't go out because the banks, once there's a recession, they start to harbor their money very closely. They don't lend it out. Businesses are going bankrupt and so forth. And people become unemployed. And so you don't build big infrastructure stuff in a recession, usually. Now, you can have something like the WPA and the New Deal that Franklin Roosevelt set up back in the 1930s during the Great Depression, that helped to bring us out of our problems, but we didn't really come out of depression until the war, until World War II. That's what really stimulated the money to start moving again. So one hopes that we don't need another war, a World War III, to get money moving. But recession is looming over us, and what we're seeing in terms of bankruptcies in many industries right now, I mentioned in a prior episode, is that in the next couple of quarters, either this quarter or in the last quarter of 2024, there's a very good possibility we will be in recession. Even if we're not in recession, then the growth rate will probably be below 3%. And 3% is the target rate that the IEA used when they came up with their estimate that we would be achieving peak demand of oil in 2029. So unless we surpass 3%, then the IEA is on track to be correct. And that's the big question. Who's right? Is it the oil bulls, the people who make money by selling oil and hope that it keeps selling and keeps selling at a high price? Or will it be the bears, the people who, for one reason or another, don't believe oil will and other fossil fuels will continue to power the civilization, and who bet their money on it becoming less and less of a important commodity? That is the question to watch, and I tell all of my readers, watch the futures market. That's where you're going to get a good indication of what's going on, both in our economy and with uh, what's happening with oil, and whether we have reached or are going to reach the peak of its usage, or we are sliding downhill. In terms of production, we've been downhill since 2018, and have not surpassed the amount produced in that year yet. We'll just have to see what happens. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed the scenery here, and I'll be back with some other beautiful locations over the next few days. I'm going to try to make more videos, and that's all we'll do. This time until next time, here on the Colllapse Cafe of the Doomstead Diner. Hasta la pasta.